Now imagine that right in the middle of this thing, the volume goes off on the other screen. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Welcome to today's episode of Magnifying HR Voices. I am your host, Julie Turney. And I know I wasn't here last week. Did you miss me? I missed you. And I'm so glad that we're able to be here together today for my last show for the year, guys. This is my last show for the year. And I will talk a little bit more about that later on and what's in store for 2022. But I have covered 24 episodes of Magnifying HR Voices from June 2021 up to now. And my brain and my body say it's time for a break. And I'm going to listen to them because what kind of coach would I be if I didn't listen to my own body telling me that it needs a break? So today's the last one, but I will be letting you know at the end of the show what is going to happen in between there. I am so glad that you are here and you're able to join me and my guest, Noll Wilson, as we talk about neurodiversity in HR. This is a topic that I've got to tell you is super close to my heart. Why? Because I am neurodiverse. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 5, and between the ages of 5 and 6, I should say, and grew up with people always classifying me as hyperactive. My brain is constantly moving at a supercharge, and sometimes to my benefit, sometimes to my detriment. And so today, I wanted to have this conversation with my twin kindred spirit, Noll Wilson, to talk to you about this topic of neurodiversity in HR and how we have coped with it throughout our HR careers, but also to have that conversation about how do you work with neurodiverse talent? How do you recruit it? How do you manage neurodiverse talent? This is a very important topic. I want you to comment and chime in and let us know how you're feeling about the conversation. Let us know where you're joining us from, and let's have a great last show, everyone. I'm going to bring up Sarah. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm so good. I was taking notes as you were chatting.
Yes, so glad to have you here today, Sarah, for this conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me to let our audience know a little bit more about neurodiversity and how we as HR professionals cope being neurodiverse, how we get stuff done, how we don't get stuff done.
How we can get a lot done in a short amount of time and then go a long distance and not get as much done.
Exactly. So before we get to the questions, I would love for you to just take some time to tell our audience a little bit about you, who you are, what your HR origin story is, how did you get here, and what are you doing now? I know that's a loaded question, but I know you can handle it.
It is loaded. It's interesting, and to think about my HR origin story, because when I think back to Sarah at my undergraduate level, I was a theater performance and theater education major. So I didn't even know what HR was when I was younger. I grew up in the arts and I knew the arts. And so my origin story is that I was dating a young gentleman and moved to Des Moines, Iowa to see if that relationship would work out. It did. We just celebrated 14 years this year of being married. And in Des Moines, you do what any good Des Moines person does. You get a job in insurance. And so I got a job in insurance because I wanted my evenings free to do theater. But that is where I got introduced to more formal corporate business, where I got introduced to training. And my background in theater education wasn't teaching theater, but it was using theater as an educational tool. So I became really fascinated with how could we improve the learning experience of our training by using more experiential learning techniques. And so I got into management and training and was fascinated by the power dynamics of how do we create more psychologically safe environments, even though I didn't know that was the word. And then got my master's in leadership development and organizational development, and found myself in a really beautiful opportunity at a company called ROG, where I was able to lead the leadership and development. And that is where I entered into HR, because the talent development role lived in HR. So that's my origin story from stage to boardroom. And so where we're at now is just under 4 years ago, I went on my own full time. So I've created a leadership coaching and consulting practice where I have an incredible team of colleagues, and we're really, really passionate and on a mission to make the workplace work better for humans, right? By helping people empower, understand the complexity of the humans they serve, understand how to show up for them, how to have really high trusting relationships, how to be more intentional in closing the gap between what they intend to do and the actual impact that they make. And so that's what we keep busy with these days. It's just trying to make the world better one leader at a time. Oh no, for some reason I can't hear you. Hold on.
It's me. It's me.
You are. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Me and this mute business. You think we get better at it after?
You know what though? But like, it's the, we had a tough day. A lot of my clients yesterday had tough technology, and I was like, it's just, you've got to accept that that's inevitable. Even though we haven't figured out, it's still going to happen.
It is. No matter what you do. And me and this mute thing just don't work at all. I was saying that you're doing such a great job at it, Sarah, and you're absolutely awesome. And I'm so glad that you are in this space doing the amazing things that you're doing, helping organizations to create great leaders and just great people all together.
Right.
All together. But we're here to talk about our neurodiversity. Because even though you are so amazing and you do all of the great things that you do, we do have challenges suffering with our neurodiversity. So what are some of the challenges? Let's start with that. What are some of the challenges that you faced in your career being someone with a neurodiversity?
Yeah. Well, I feel like the question of my origin story should be the fact that I got diagnosed less than 5 years ago. And so if I can start there for just a minute, because, I know that hopefully people who are turning in have some familiarity with it, but we know that especially when we talk about ADD or ADHD, there's a lot of stigma and there's a lot of misunderstanding. So I was diagnosed when I started the transition into building my own company, because all the guardrails I had in the corporate setting were gone. And suddenly I had to manage all the balls in the air, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't. And and that was one of the things that led me to get diagnosed. And the thing is, and when I think about ADHD, I feel like the name of it is pretty deceiving, because it talks about it being a deficit, and it's not that it's a deficit, it's that it's a regulation challenge, right? Like parts of our brain don't light up in the same way that maybe a neurotypical. And so, for me, certainly, and I think you'll relate to some of this, but some of the challenges that I faced in my career is, one, I feel like every performance goal had something to do with project management, right? Something to do with time management, project management. And I would work on it, and I would take the classes, and I would work with project managers and do all of this. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed that I realized my brain just doesn't operate in that way.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I would say, so obviously there's the time management component, there's the focus.
Yes.
I was really fortunate, and I think you're probably similar in that, what happens with our brains is we can become hyper-focused. And that hyper-focus mode is a really magical place to be in.
Beautiful.
And
spot.
It is. And so we're fortunate that what excites our brain and can get us into that hyper-focus mode is our career.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. So I think that helped me sort of skate by in a way I didn't realize. But the one that I want to share that was a very real challenge for me when I first was starting my business was shame. I had I struggled with a lot of shame around not being able to keep track of things, not being able to remember people's names or remember people's faces. And it was a real trigger for me when those moments would come up. And you can imagine it takes a lot of energy to go to and then to be able to come back to.
I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes when I'd be doing an onboarding and I'd be walking people around or and introducing them to people who I talk to every single day. But for some reason, in one moment,
Yeah.
I cannot remember this person's name. And I'm like, oh, brain, like, please work. And that's something that's very, very common. And
Yeah.
again, like, there's certain things about my HR career that I knew like I didn't like. So I struggled with those things, like anything administrative.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
like
I'm like,
the mundane, right? Like and part of that, that was one of the things, hopefully people who are checking in are people obviously who maybe have it, but who don't, who are curious is, my therapist, she described it in a really powerful way. And she said, well, you have to understand that your brain, like structurally, you could put your brain and neurotypical brain both in an MRI. And we could ask you to both do really boring tasks, and it would be equally boring for both of you. The difference is that their prefrontal cortex would light up enough to be able to do it, and yours just won't.
yeah.
And so it isn't that we're being choosy or whatever. It's physically painful because we can't like light up that part of our brain to be able to do
No.
the work that we want to do.
I am so glad that you gave that example, because I think that a lot of times this is where some HR professionals get dubbed, or employees in general get dubbed, as being lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we're lazy, it's just we're not excited by it. It doesn't ignite us, it doesn't motivate us.
Yeah.
So when we're doing those tasks, it makes it so much harder, because, as you said, that part of our brain just doesn't light up and go, okay, well, you still got to get it done. That part of our brain literally looks like how we feel, which is
right. Right. Well, and it's the I, like, people are always, sometimes people be confused, like, how does stimulants calm you down and focus you? And I was like, because it literally is activating the part of our brain to help us get stuff done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure. I see Amy is chiming in from Texas, Austin, Texas. And Amy says that she does have ADHD.
Mm.
Medication has helped, but she's still searching for ways to manage her day to day and not dive down every rabbit hole that comes her way. Oh my God.
Yep.
Should we talk about those bright, shiny objects that just get in our way?
Yep.
Oh my God.
My husband made me a t-shirt that before I got diagnosed, that it said prone to inspiration, right? Because it was just constantly like, oh, I have this idea and I have this idea and I have this idea. But that's a real challenge. And on some level, depending on your role in HR actually can be a really good place. For a neurodiverse brain, from the standpoint of being able to do a lot of different things, right?
Exactly.
And having like a high sense of external urgency when you're dealing with employee relation issues, when you're working with managers. It might be a little trickier if you're in a larger organization and you're just hyper focused on one area. But Amy, I hear you. I absolutely hear you. And do you want to talk about some strategies? Would that be helpful?
I think that's what we'll talk about next, which is in terms of, like, what are some of the coping mechanisms. Amy's flooding the yes, let's talk about it. Yeah. To stay focused. Like, I know for me, a lot of times it really helps. So like I said, I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 5, in a time when there wasn't much medication. So like, my mom was pretty much winging it, trying to figure it out of how to get this little girl to keep quiet, keep still. And there are a couple things that my mom did for me that down to this day work for me. And I'm super grateful that my mom took the time to understand me and see me and do those kind of things for me. So a couple things that my mom did for me was she put me into sports because I was very active. So she put me into sports, track and field. She put me into creative, into the creative spot. So I did dance, I did ballet, I did tap. And then she also put me into the space of learning music. And she challenged me by introducing me to classical music. And so being introduced to things like string quartets, listening to orchestras, picking up sounds from different instruments. And she would ask me questions like, so where are the wind instruments playing at this point? Where are the string instruments playing at this point? What kind of drum is that? And all of those things would help me to focus. The other thing that she did that I hated, absolutely hated, but love you, Mom, but I absolutely hated it, was she would make me write for an hour every day. She would give me a book and a piece of paper, and she'd say, I want you to write as much as you can within this hour. It helped my handwriting.
Sure.
I have the best handwriting ever. But it was such an annoying thing, but it really helped me to be able to, in those moments, focus. So like on things like I hate, like going to school, the one thing I hated was fractions. I hated fractions, and I cry and I get sick and had stomachache. I couldn't go to school. And my mom would always know whenever I had those days where I was like acting up, I'm like, no, I can't go to school today. I don't feel well. She's like, you got fractions today, right? I'd be like, yeah. But, you know, those kind of things really helped me. That first introduction really helped me. So like to this day, I work a lot with music, background noise. Classical music helps me a lot. So when I'm listening to string quartets or jazz, it has to be stuff with no words, because if it has words, my brain goes, oh, let's sing that. Oh, let's find another song like that. That's what my brain does. But when it's that kind of music that's low, slow, beautiful, in those moments, and sometimes in the crescendos, is when I get into the pockets and I get hyper focused. And that works a lot for me. What about you?
I mean, I love hearing your stories, you know, both from the standpoint, I mean, it's pretty remarkable when you got diagnosed, there wasn't as much information, in particular for women and girls. Right? There certainly wasn't. And so I love how intuitive your mom was. And I had 35 years of habits I had to relearn or to undo. And, you know, and I think a couple of things, right? Some of these are obvious, right? One is, you know, recognizing that time blindness is a very real thing. You know, I always joke that I'm just hyper optimistic. I think that I can, you know, like, oh, I'm not going to hit any traffic, and I'm not going to, right, like the dog's not going to pee and I'm going to have to clean it up. Like I can get to where I need to go in 10 minutes, regardless of how far the destination is. And so even being cognizant of that, I have to be really thoughtful about, you know, scheduling travel time in. So I do that, you know, but Amy, to your point of going down every rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that helps me sometimes, I mean, that's the other thing, is there's some coping tools that help some days, and other days they're just not what I need. And so I have to be flexible enough, is, you know, setting a timer and really forcing myself to go 15 minutes and I'm just going to work on this one task. And anytime that it moves, I'm going to come back to it. The other thing I was going to say is, you know, especially when we think about time management, you know, because one of the challenges of a neurodiverse brain is that our brain will take in everything and not know how to prioritize it.
Exactly.
Right. And so a lot of the tools and techniques that are out there for project management, time management, they're for neurotypical brains. Yeah. They're not designed for our brains. And
please tell them.
Right? It's like, I know you want me to do lists, and I'm going to try, but the lists are going to look different every time. So one of the things that has helped me is to think of it in terms of what's my manual. What's the manual I need, and to be unapologetic about it. And so a couple of things that help me. I'm really creative at night. I can get into a real hyper focus mode at night. Yeah. And so instead of, you know, yesterday even was a good example. You wrapped up meetings at like 3 or 3:30. I still had like some pretty big tasks I needed to do. And I just needed to take a rest. I took a nap, and I knew that I could crank out a lot from like 6 to 8. And so just understanding, and hi, Deanna from Chicago, understanding, you know, chat is the worst thing for the ADHD brain. So
I know.
Hi,
yeah, but my eyes keep going.
Yeah, no. but
This is ADHD in real time, people.
right. It's also why we're good at virtual. But like, but to think of it as your own manual. So for me, it was my circadian rhythm, and being unapologetic about that. The other thing, like you mentioned, music, right? Familiar music, instrumental music is really helpful for me. Like classical Christmas music is really good for me right now.
Christmas music?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, in the season, not
Yeah.
all the time, right?
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, it's because it's so familiar. For
Ah,
me, it's like it's so familiar and soothing that like can calm me down and focus me. Also, like Nora Jones, she gets me into she can get me into the zone.
Laura Jones, yeah.
But when I say be unapologetic, one of the things I know is that if I need to create an external sense of urgency that doesn't exist, I know that sometimes I just need somebody present with me while I'm working. So my colleague Teresa, sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, can you just fold your laundry while I'm working on this, and I can just talk it out with you?" And I'm not embarrassed to ask for that. She knows why I need that, right? And so continuing to just pay attention and listen to what serves me, whether that's working with somebody, whether that's like having somebody help you with components of it, whether that's listening to music, doing it at night, going for a walk and thinking about it, and being okay that the traditional way of working doesn't work for our brain.
That's right.
Yeah.
I can't absolutely agree with you there. I see. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Tina. Hi, Amy. Yes, I see. Sharon is asking me. Okay, yes, what I've been using since I was little still helps me down to today. Man, the one thing that's new that I love doing now is I swear by the Calm app. I love the Calm app. Oh, I have something amazing to tell you guys, but give me a minute. I love the Calm app, and I use the sleep stories because sometimes if I am so hyper focused on work, I'll work until I'm too tired not to sleep.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Right. Sometimes I work when I'm done, I'm too tired, but I still can't sleep. So I use the Calm sleep stories. That helps me a lot. I do an 11-minute mindfulness exercise every single day, and sometimes I listen to some of the mindful stories that they have. The one that I absolutely love and will listen to from now to whenever they move it on is LeBron James, how he gets focused before going on the court so that he can focus on the court. And I almost think LeBron James might have ADHD as well.
I mean, here's the thing: a lot of the great creatives are,
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like, I think we hear oftentimes, and I think it was said in a study that most people who take to the HR profession are usually persons who have high functioning anxiety. So that we can function with all the crazy. And for the most part, quite a lot of us do have a neurodiversity. We just haven't been diagnosed. So like one of the things that I've heard a lot of people like spending a lot of time this year getting to know my HR community, having those virtual coffees. There are so many of us who are now being diagnosed, like you, as you said, being diagnosed with ADHD, knowing that there was something wrong, but they just couldn't put the finger on it. But then taking a chance on themselves and going and getting diagnosed. Yeah. Hi, Melanie.
Well, and can we I want to pause on that, like that we felt like something was wrong. So let's be really, really clear. This is a disability because of how our world is structured. It's not necessarily because of who we are, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it becomes challenging because of the expectation of high urgency, high perfectionism, high productivity, right? Like in this highly structured environment. And so and and the other thing when you talk about the high functioning ADHD is because we're really good at anticipating crises. We've already thought through all the possibilities.
Yes, we've already gone through all of those scenarios in our head, and we found the one
we're prepared.
Exactly. And I think neurotypical people take us for granted. We need to get that something better needs to be done about that because they don't understand this. And I think the education of understanding how you work with neurodiverse talent is key. I'm just looking at Alicia. Alicia, hi, Alicia Harris. Alicia says that she is the same way. So it's going to come up on here as LinkedIn user, but I see you, Alicia. She said that she just asked him to stick around with her while she works. Yes. Yeah. So she's the same as you. And I find that works too. Sometimes like having company, but at the end of the day, for me, I was an only child.
Sure.
I like my space, so it's very easy. Once I have the right music, I can work. So that works well for me.
I have 4 siblings, so like I was used to chaos. And
having 3 children and a husband has taught me a lot about working in chaos. For a lot of years, I was on my own. Amy says, yes, complex PTSD, anxiety, depression, and ADHD. I see you. We see you, Amy. We definitely see you. Yeah. The last 2 years really have been crazy. I mean, maybe we should talk about that a little bit, Sarah.
Yeah.
What have the last 2 years been like for you?
I mean, that's a real loaded question. Depends on the day. Some days I'm crying. Some days I'm fatigued. Some days I'm fighting. Some days I'm, I think that in a strange way, and I heard this from a lot of others, is, some of my friends who have, anxiety or ADHD are like, I was like prepared for this. So this is not as bad because like I've been planning for this day. But, I think that like everyone, right, the constant uncertainty, the constant complexity, the constant, sense of loss, like the stress, I mean, that is like, let's connect it back, right? We've all been under an incredible amount of stress, prolonged exposure to stress, which impacts all of our brains, whether you're neurodiverse or neurotypical. And I know for me to cognitively be at my best, rest is really important. Having lower levels of stress is really important. So for me, some of the things I'm noticing because of just sort of that like low hum of stress that we've been living under for the last 2 years is, like the brain fog is very, very real.
Very real. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Very real every day. The last couple of weeks, I've been living under a mountain of brain fog. And it's like, you've got a lot to do. You just can't compartmentalize it to say, okay, what should I do first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
No matter how hard you try to fight it, it's like, no, I just can't. I can't do this.
Yeah.
And then I end up watching Netflix for hours on end. And then when I get to a point where I can actually focus and get work done, I am a beast for hours, to the point that I'll sit until it's unhealthy to sit for so long. And then I get up and I'll move around a little bit. But yeah, it really is a struggle. And no matter what I take, it doesn't make it any better. And the other thing that I hate too is like sometimes I get really good ideas in the middle of the night. They wake me up out of my sleep.
Sure. I just solved this problem.
Oh my gosh, I have the answer. What? And it's like, so now I've learned to like do voice notes on my phone. Well, I've been doing that for years. Like I just do voice notes on my phone. The other one is like when I get an idea in the shower. And the minute you come out, it's gone.
Mm-hmm. So that's how the brain works. The brain is like, we're crossing this physical threshold. Now we're moving into it. It's why you can go into a room, you're looking for something. You're like, what the hell was I looking for again? Because there's like this mental shift that happens when you walk through that door. Yeah. Oh, Dolly. Yeah. The brain fog and procrastination. Yeah. It is real. And again, because of the extended prolonged exposure to stress, like we're all like, I call them brain glitches. It's like, oh, that was a glitch. Yeah. And if we can, I mean, because it's clear that like this idea of procrastination is resonating, something, the external pressure, because Gerald, from especially both from a neurodiverse perspective, but also from a standpoint of just like fatigue, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we can't create that sense of urgency internally, and we need that give me a hard deadline and I will get that baby done right in a
Now,
short amount of time. But
let me
like,
yeah, but Sarah, how? Like, how close to the deadline do you go? Tell the
well,
truth.
okay, it depends, because now sometimes I will say, sometimes I'm going to offer this up,
Yes,
because
go for it.
I know my creative process is I'm an incubator, right? So like if I'm working on a keynote or a presentation or something that I'm creating, that I will think about it and I'll be chewing on it, and I might like take a little bit of notes, but like, and then when the time has come that I have to create it, right, or that sense of urgency is there, I can execute really strongly on it.
Yeah.
And that's not procrastination, because my creative process is to be,
different.
I'm incubating, right?
Yes,
The procrastination becomes an issue when the product we create isn't as good as it could have been.
exactly.
But like, let's talk about the fatigue, right? We know that our resiliency is low. We know that our need for rest right now is so much higher. And I think that that's contributing to, you know, all these people who are talking about this, like struggling with the procrastination, perhaps even more.
Yeah.
It's because we're tired. Our bodies are tired. And I think we're in this situation where maybe things are starting to look similar depending on where you live, but you're realizing you're not the same person. And so how do we give ourselves grace? And I think that becomes an additional challenge if you're neurodiverse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to remember that what we're going through right now is just so not normal. And we have to be able to, like forgive ourselves, or, like you said, give ourselves grace in this moment.
Yeah.
When will normal ever be normal? Will we ever be normal again? We don't know.
See, this is why I think we should do away with performance reviews this year. Give everyone across the board raise for just surviving the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Say we all did good, right? Like go take a nap and
Let's take
that won't happen. But.
That one day, but that one. Now, while I know that most organizations had good intention about this one wellness day, and they close the company for this one day, like I understand what what you're trying to achieve, but it's just one day. It's not. You're not really solving the problem.
Yeah.
You're just throwing something at it to see if it sticks. Now, while I see a lot of people celebrating those things, to my mind, it's just like, we've gone through so much. How about we just close off the office early? How about we just, like you said, not worry about performance appraisals? Let's just, the fact that we're all still here, we have survived this crazy, we've made some kind of profit. Let's share that, with our people, because we couldn't have done it without them. And let's move on from there. I totally agree. We need a wellness month. I love the fact that you talked about incubating, because at the end of the day, we really have to recognize that as people with neurodiversities, we have a lot going on. We have a lot going on in our brain. It doesn't, no matter what we do, no matter what we throw at it, whether it's medication or anything like that, it's never going to be 100% foolproof.
Yeah, and it's interesting just to say that, Dolly, I'm very pro. That's why, like my company, we shut down for 2 full weeks, because I want that time for people to decompress. We know it takes a couple of days for people to sort of officially shift out. And we also know that a day or two before vacation ends, we start thinking about work. And it's like, how do we get a good chunk of time in there where we can rest? But, you talk about like so many different things happening in the brain. And obviously every brain is different. Every neurodiverse brain shows up differently as well.
Yeah.
That was the impetus for me for getting diagnosed. My husband and I, we were playing a video game, and my brain was so distracted by like 3 or 4 different things. And I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I just can't, I'm just not into this. I'm like, I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I'll never forget, because he was like, when does your brain just not, like, when are you able, because he's like, right now I'm just focused on the game. And he said, when does your brain ever just sort of focus on one thing? And I laughed, and I was like,
what is that?
Like, is that a thing? And that's when he was like,
people's brains do that.
We joke about, we know your brother has ADHD. We joke about your dad, like maybe, and that takes energy, right? Yeah. Like it definitely takes energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to touch quickly on, I know the comments are crazy.
Yeah.
I so appreciate you. I really want to touch a little bit on this about declaring neurodiversity in the workplace. Like I have had this experience with clients who struggle to declare their neurodiversity, but
Yeah.
they know that it's impacting their work. What are your thoughts on this? Like, how does that conversation go if you do declare your neurodiversity?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of lump this into also talking about your mental health. Like it depends on the situation because the reality, I mean, like so in an ideal world, you should be able to speak to this, but we know we don't live in an ideal world. And especially like, today we're focusing, really just on the ADHD and not getting into autism and right. Cause
Right.
but ADHD in particular still has a lot of stigma around it. And there's still a lot of misunderstanding. And there's a lot of, is it really a thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, get in my brain and I'll show you it's a thing. Like observe me and you can see that it's a thing.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting. When I was diagnosed, I was on my way out and transitioning out of my company, like transitioning out of RUG into my new company, the company that I started. And I had about a month left. And so when I got diagnosed, I went into my boss and I was like, well, full on ADHD. And she's like, are you surprised? I'm not. Like I kind of had you pegged as this when I first met you. And so I think especially if it's important from getting support, right, and getting those accommodations, that's really important. But there is just the reality that there's a lot of judgment out there still around ADHD. Like, well, you just need to show up on time. You just need to focus more. I'm like, no, do you understand that part of my brain doesn't electrically actually light up in the same way? Or that the part of my hippocampus is actually probably shaped differently than yours? Or, right, like my amygdala is just more hyperactive. Like this isn't just, and medicine doesn't help everyone.
Nope.
I've yet to find the medication that helps me for more than a couple of days. And so, right, like those compensating. So for me, there are times when I'll share it with clients, like if I'm whenever I start a coaching relationship, right, like that designing the relationship conversation, and I'll be really transparent, and I'll just say like, so something you should know about me is this, here's how it might show up for you.
Yeah.
I can have a lot of ideas really fast. And sometimes that can become overwhelming to people, right?
Exactly.
And so yeah. So I need you to like kind of help if I've got the nozzle on too strong, right? Like in our conversations, sometimes I'll joke about it in sessions or workshops, like, oh, don't worry about me. I've got ADHD and 10 years of improv, so we're all good.
Yeah.
And like I'll use it sort of as a joke, but I think about my early career, and I'm in a different place now, right? Obviously, like I own my own company. I have a different level of confidence in who I am and what I stand for and what I need. But when I think about like my first career, I wouldn't have shared it there because it wouldn't have been safe. And it would have been, I think it would have been used against me.
Yeah. How do we overcome that though, Sarah? Because it's a journey, but it's something that needs to be dealt with, right? People need to be able to feel safe to bring these things to work. Now, from the perspective of when we talk about neurodiversity in general, and we talk about autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, all those different things. Some of those things will show up very easily for people to recognize. An autistic person doesn't interview well.
Yeah.
They're very socially awkward.
They can be, right? Like they can.
They can be. And it can show up the same way for someone with ADHD.
Yeah.
Sometimes we struggle with simple things like eye contact.
Oh yeah. I'm like, do you want me to look at your face, or do you want me to get the best ideas? Because if you want the best ideas, then I'm always going to look to the left.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And I think that these are things that we need to constantly educate people on, because if we don't, will there ever be safe spaces?
Yeah. And the challenge is, right, like the onus is on the people who don't understand or who aren't seeking, right? Yeah. And I fully admit, one of the first teams in my early 20s, so this is before I really understood ADHD. I certainly didn't know that that was something that was a struggle for me. I had a team member who, when we hired him, he said, so just so you know, right, like I have severe ADHD. I'm on medicine, but I do need some help with it. And even for me, like somebody who I feel like I'm super understanding and compassionate, was sort of a like, is that really that big of a deal? Like, certainly you can just like, and and I apologized to him later because I said I didn't understand it, and I also didn't take the step to understand it. And I'm really sorry for the role that I played that may have created an unsafe environment for you. And we ended up having a really beautiful emotional conversation about it. But I think that for people who maybe are listening to this, who are like, well, I don't have it, I don't have kids who have it, I don't understand it. Ask somebody.
Yeah.
If you know, or just Google's free.
Do the research.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much information out there, and it's so helpful. Or like, I love the, different artists like Danny Donovan, who does these great, illustrative, here's what it's like to have an ADHD brain.
Yeah.
Just like seek to understand. Just because you don't experience it doesn't mean it's not true.
Exactly. I think I follow so many ADHD creatives on Instagram who really break it down really well. And I feel like the ADHD nurse, she's fantastic.
No, I don't know her, so I'll have to...
at just breaking it down for you, and what it looks like. Again, works really well for me because I'm a visual person. She uses lots of colors. And I think that it really is important that we find these opportunities to educate.
Yeah.
There are so many things that we cover from an HR perspective in the workplace. I know we focus a lot on wellness and well-being. We focus a lot on diversity and inclusion, but diversity also includes neurodiversity. And while the same energy and effort that we take to have conversations around race, color, gender, sexuality, we should be having these same conversations in the workplace about neurodiversity.
Yeah.
Because all of these people, you can have someone black and neurodiverse, white and neurodiverse, yellow and neurodiverse. You can have someone gay and neurodiverse. Like, it shows up in every person that you interact with. And just to educate about one part about what makes this person a human being isn't enough.
It's and I don't know if we'll get to like things that I've experienced that people have done well in supporting me, but I very much lived in two worlds. I lived in the world where it was like, you have to fit this box, you have to do it this way, you have to, right? Like, and I constantly felt like I was failing, and I constantly felt like I was behind. Even though I was performing at a really high level, it took me a ton of energy to try to do that. But by the time I left that company, I had lost all of my sense of self. I'd lost my confidence. I'd lost my sense of self-worth. They didn't realize how bad it was till I got to the new company. But when I moved to AROG, and specifically, I want to give a shout out to Lisa Wolf and Aaron Barfels, who were two of my HR leaders, HR director, chief HR officer. They were able to tap into and understand very quickly how my brain worked, and created a space where I could really thrive. And I remember one particular event we were doing, and the CEO pulls me over, Dave, and he was like, boy, Sarah, we're really lucky to have you. And I said, remember, I was the same person at the last company, so I'm really lucky to have you too. And so understanding that by taking the time to understand it, by taking the time to really think about and be intentional about, how do I create the space that's best for you to thrive, you're going to get so much more out of that person, and it's going to be better for them, it's going to be better for you, and it's going to be better for the company. I see Lynette's comments, so
Yes, to the comments. I love her.
There should be Batman music to the comments. Okay,
that was my TikTok moment, everyone. Sorry. Yeah, Lynette is saying this sounds like there needs to be a full seminar in this space in HR. Employers need to be made aware and taught the necessary tools to environment, so that the environment is inclusive. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Did you get that?
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at Co's comment of the like it allows us to like it's a proven strength. And again, when you're in the right environment, yeah, absolutely. It's,
Hi, Kalila.
yeah.
Yeah. Kalila, this is so powerful. It is an area that we rarely speak about. And I feel like it's so important for us to have this conversation. So many studies have shown that when we recruit neurodiverse talent, we get more innovation, we get more creativity. People with neurodiversities are able to push out things in a way that neurotypical people cannot. They just can't look at things the way we look at them.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of times, even like for me, doing so many different things, like I feel like if I had to do one thing, I'd die. The ability that I've had now to do so many different things, leaving one organization, doing all the things that I do now, including this live, give me life, give me energy. I could not go back to just working in one organization, sitting behind a desk, giving ideas that just, I could not do it. You have to do stuff that really feeds your soul, right? I can't believe, Sarah, 45 minutes have gone.
Are we done? I got so much more to say.
We're gonna listen, guys. If you want to stick around with Sarah and I, we are gonna go into after party mode.
I think we already went to the after party mode. I think we're already.
Well, we've been there a while.
Yeah. I mean, here's something like Kalila, to your point, and I'm curious to hear what resonates, for other people, is one of the things when I think about the people like my last manager, Lisa, she was really good at knowing when I was in hyper focus mode. And so like when she would see that I was just like knocking stuff out, maybe I was working really late, she was so in tune that she'd be like, hey, you've pushed through a lot this week. Why don't you take Friday off? Right? Let's like, she was so in tune with honoring and understand. Like I didn't understand it for myself, but she was able to see when I was in that hyper focus state, and I could put out so much work and so much creativity and insight. Right. And then she knew I needed like some rest and recovery. Right. And so, it's just so powerful when you have that space. Exactly. I would love to do part 2.
Yeah, we've got 2, 3, and 4. We're gonna give you the best that we can. I mean, to your point though, Sarah, when we talk about creating these safe spaces, like what are some organizations that that are doing it right, like that are getting it right, doing it well? Who are they?
Okay, I can't. Okay, wait, hold on.
We got you.
I know. I don't know
some music.
I'm gonna forget the name. I'm gonna forget the name. Yes, we do need to clone Lisa. She was the best boss, one of the best bosses I ever worked for, and my chief HR officer, Erin, because I went through panic disorder, and they were such an integral part of leading from a human perspective.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna have to add it in the show notes, but there is a government agency. Jeff, he actually has a podcast, Starfleet Academy. I'll give him a little shout out.
Nice. Shout out to Jeff.
Okay, so in his organization, they're constantly looking at how can we make things more accessible. So where do we need to add more visuals into our procedures? They ask their team members, hey, what's a better way for you to take in information? Do you prefer reading it? Do you like visuals? Do you like whatever? And then once a month, they watch a video or they invite speakers who are experts in the space of neurodiversity to come in and talk. And then, when he said, we were talking and he was telling me this, I actually got pretty emotional and misty because I just kept thinking like, what would have been possible for not just me, for so many people, if their leaders were thinking like this, if they were realizing that, somebody not making eye contact doesn't make them less of a worker, doesn't mean they add less value, doesn't mean they can't also be a great leader themselves. Exactly. Right. And so that was a recent example talking to him that was, it was so overwhelming emotionally for me to hear their intentionality behind, just like, how do we share the information differently? how do we present it? And so that's one example I can share.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of organizations that are well known again, like HP, Ernst and Young. They're doing some great things with really recruiting, not just recruiting neurodiverse talent, but educating their organization
Love that.
about working with neurodiverse talent. And I think that that's powerful. And there are a lot of organizations globally. I think we need to get better at this in the Caribbean. I will say that. But there are organizations globally who are working with people who are neurodiverse to understand and relate to the world of work in terms of being recruited for a job. Because imagine you have a workforce that is completely untapped. You have all of these people who are brilliant. And I think a lot of times when you ask people, well, what do you think of when you hear the word neurodiverse? And people say Sheldon Cooper.
Yeah.
Right? Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. That's the fastest thing people could bring to you when they go, what does this look like to me? Or the guy that plays in The Good Doctor.
Sure.
Yeah, though that's what people think of when they think of neurodiverse. But every person with autism is not the same.
Right.
They look at the world differently. They relate to things differently. They respond to things differently, but they're not all the same. So everyone with autism does not look like Sheldon.
Right.
Right? Everyone with autism doesn't look that way. Everyone with ADHD does not look like Justin Timberlake, but he has ADHD, right? So I think it's really important for people to recognize and get that education on how they can support their organizations more effectively. But there are a lot of organizations out there that focus on that because you have such a high amount of people who are not employed, have the qualifications, and sometimes are overqualified. But because they can't relate to you in an interview, you ignore them, you don't hire them. And they end up at McDonald's or they end up at Subway, they end up at a gas station because they can't get anything else. Because the world doesn't accept them for being who they are, being different.
Yeah. It's and what a missed opportunity for everyone. I mean, I think the thing that we should be asking ourselves is what are we losing because we aren't creating space for everyone? You know, what is the world losing out on? Because right. And I love, you know, and it, for me, hearing you talk, Julie, about just like how everyone is different. I mean, obviously, and this transcends to neurotypical brains, so it's not unique to neurodiverse, but it's all the more reason why it's so important that if you are a person in a position of power who's supporting people, that you get to know your people and you pay attention to them and you talk to them and you understand their needs or you anticipate it. Like Lisa, I didn't ask Lisa to do some of the things she did. She just was tuned into me, anticipated, and experimented with it.
Yes.
Right? It's like, you know, for me, you know, when I walk into the, like, I don't know, the story I try to tell is when I walk into my storage room that's like just overwhelmingly messy, my brain is like paralyzed, does not compute. My husband will be like, here's one box for you. And like Lisa figured that out for me. It was like, hey, I'm going to help you prioritize your goals. And again, like, so it's really simple, not easy maybe, but just like having conversations, paying attention to, listening to, trying different things. You don't need some assessment. We don't fit into 4 boxes, right? But if you actually listen and pay attention to the people who are around you, you learn about what's important to them. You start to sense what they might need, and then you create the space for that. Like that's how you create really great cultures, is by listening and caring and honoring the people. And again, going back to honoring the complexity of the humans you serve.
What a great way for us to kind of wind stuff down. I want to talk a little bit about your book, Sarah.
Yeah.
You've got a book coming out. Tell us a little bit about it.
We do. We the team, you know, but so after about a decade of being really fascinated with why people avoided conflict, and myself included, reformed avoider, grew up in the Midwest where everything was Midwest nice. The book is called Don't Feed the Elephants, Overcoming the Art of Avoidance.
I love elephants.
Yeah. It's all about not feeding the elephants. And so it comes out in February. We're still finalizing the date. I'll know today. So we'll be sharing that. But yeah, it's a love letter and nudges for those of us who struggle with conflict and how we can start to overcome that and understand that the comfort we think we gain in the short term never outdoes the damage that happens in the long term. And connecting it back to neurodiversity for people who might appreciate it, I was really intentional in writing this book for a brain like mine. Because, you know, Julie and I, you and I were talking before we started of like how hard it is to get through books because we get distracted. We have to reread things. When you see only when you see only text right over and over, it's, you know, can be really hard to focus. And so when I was working with my publisher, I said, this content is for everyone. And I want to design this book so that more people can have accessibility to it. So, right. Conversational, shorter sections, illustrations. So I'm really proud of that, of just writing a book for our brains too.
I am so proud of you, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
I am looking forward to reading this book, and hopefully we'll get to it cover to cover.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I tried to design it.
Fun. We're gonna get through this book from one end to the other. It's so funny, like how we interpret information, even from, I think it's something as simple as your handbook, right? Do you create your handbook for a neurodiverse brain? No, you don't. You write paragraphs and paragraphs of nothingness, because who else is going to read that? Right. But imagine like if you color coded your handbook, if you put in more diagrams in your handbook, some like cartoon skits.
Right, like use illustrations, like use illustrations to reinforce the point. Even if you say it in text, using that, Lynette, you're part of our group. We were talking, I was like, if the best information isn't in the 4 chapters, I'm going to miss it.
Go on.
Even if I love it. Even if I love it.
Beginning, end.
Right. If it's not, and then I was like, well, that's a problem. The good stuff is in the backside of my book. So I was like, I should have flipped that.
Beginning, end. Let's go to the back. Yeah. Yes, Lynette, you are definitely a part of our crew.
Welcome to the family.
Any final words, recommendations, comments? Tell these people what's next for Sarah and where they can find you.
Yeah, connect with me on social media. I love to connect with fellow humans. I love to learn from people. So super accessible. I might not respond right away because I may be getting distracted. So just know that. But you can check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter. We're building up our Instagram. We have a newsletter that we send out every week. So you can go to our website, sarahnollwilson.com, and that we explore topics related to leading yourself, leading others. We're very passionate about mental health. And again, how do we create a workplace that works better for humans? So yeah, what's next for me is, book in February and a nap this afternoon. So
yeah, I think it's time for a nice long nap. Well deserved by both of us, I think. But let's not brag too much for the people that actually have to go back to work after this.
I had a friend once who was like, can you describe these naps for me? Like, I don't know what they're like. I have 3 children under 8, and just like, where do you lay? How long? What kind of blankets do you put over top of you? She's like, can I just live vicariously through you?
Oh my gosh, my heart goes out to her. I totally relate. My children are big now. So sometimes because not only am I someone who suffers from ADHD, I'm also an introvert. And while people see me do these things and they go, you're an introvert? Nah. Being an introvert does not mean that I can't do stuff like this, that I can't speak publicly, that I can't share space with people and hold space. But when I do it, people sap my energy. And so when this is all said and done, I need to take a nap. I'll go sit on that couch. I'll start to watch. Do you know what? I'm addicted to Red Notice. Red Notice from Netflix. Okay. If you have not watched Red Notice, people, you need to, if you have Netflix, go watch it now. The Rock. The lady that plays Wonder Woman, and my one and only favorite, Ryan Reynolds. I absolutely love Ryan Reynolds. This movie takes you all around the world. Ryan Reynolds is a thief. The woman that plays Wonder Woman, I can't remember her name, but she's a thief. They're all thieves, but it's so funny. It is absolutely
This
hilarious.
is the most beautiful, perfect ADHD moment
It is.
talking about. Like, we're gonna wrap up.
We're gonna wrap up, but we're gonna talk about Red Notice on Netflix. Yeah. This is what happens. Yes, I am an introvert, Lynette. I am a super.
And I don't know,
uber
and I don't know about other people, but I feel like the pandemic has like shifted my extroversion, partly because again, like my need for like my resiliency is lower. My need for recharging is much higher than it ever used to be. Because I was definitely like high extrovert. Let's do this. Let's keep moving. Right. You're at a conference. I'm the one down at the bar finding all the other extroverts to like continue to, build each other up. And now I'm like two hours with a friend. I'm like, oh, I need
to go to bed.
Week. I'm good.
Yes. Listen, if you've not watched Red Notice, you need to go watch it.
I'll check it out this weekend.
Gal Gadot, that's her name. Gal Gadot, that's her name. That's the lady that plays Wonder Woman. But it is an absolutely fabulous movie, and I must have watched it about 10 times since it premiered on Netflix. I kid you not, about 10 times. It's like my new go-to movie outside of Star Trek Into Darkness and every Marvel movie ever.
Well, that's a funny thing. I mean, that's one of the real simple way we can build our resilience is doing something familiar. Yeah. I mean, that's why watching familiar shows can feel so calming, is because we don't have to work. We know what to expect. We know what the emotions are. And so like when we're feeling frazzled or overwhelmed, actually, like watching something familiar is a real powerful way to start to bring up those reserves again.
Could you tell that to my children? Because they just think that I'm like crazy. You're watching that again?
like Mama needs her resilience built up.
Go play. Go play. Go talk to Sarah. And you'll understand where I'm coming from.
You are such a treat. You are such a gift. You're such a gift to this world and to our HR community. And I'm really honored. I'm really honored to call you my sister.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. I feel the same way. Oh my gosh. This was such a great conversation. You're the first person that's actually made me do this in a live. Like I just feel so like this has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, like we should be on a couch, like in our pajamas, snuggling under a blanket, chatting. We can
next year when I'm doing these lives, that's exactly you need to come back and we need to have.
I'll come down to you because that's way more interesting than where I'm at. So
yes, come on down. Come on down, guys. We have reached the end of today's show. All the fun you're gonna get out of me and Sarah today. All the randomness that you could possibly take. We are done. But like I said, I do have a couple of announcements to make. First and foremost, I just want to say to every single person who has followed me on this journey from the beginning that I created Magnifying HR Voices, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for sticking with me through every show, for following me, for participating, interacting with my content, for sharing your thoughts, your stories, for being vulnerable and sharing space with me. If you've ever had a virtual coffee with me, thank you so much. I do this because I feel we need to turn HR around. We need to change the perception of HR. We need to expand our minds as HR professionals in order to do better and be better and bring out the best in ourselves as HR professionals. And I feel like the difficult conversations that we have behind closed doors need to come forward, and we need to have these conversations more and more. And so I'm here for the long haul, guys. But listen, I've been doing Magnifying HR Voices every week since the beginning of June. I've skipped 2. So I've done 24 episodes. I am tired. I've had so many amazing guests, and I want to thank each and every single one of them. And that brings me to what you can expect for 2022. So for 2022, I will be rebranding Magnifying HR Voices. And if you take a look at the background to the video, to what you're seeing on the screen, you'll see what looks like a studio. And if you've ever seen and followed my content, you will know that everything I do that relates to HR Sound Off, which is my podcast show, has that background. So that tells you something is coming. So when I first created HR Sound Off as a podcast, I wanted to have LinkedIn Live tied into it. I wanted to be able to have at least one live session where my audience got to interact with me and my guests at the same time instead of just listening to the podcast. It's not the same thing. I love my podcast show. It will continue. I will be releasing episodes every single week. But once a month, I'm going to give you a live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook, like today. And that live session, you'll be able to interact just as you have today. But I'm going to be reducing it from every single week to once a month. Why? Because 2 years ago, I betted on myself and I decided I was going to start my own business and I was going to coach HR professionals. And while this has been quite a rocky and turbulent journey, it's been an enjoyable one because I've got to meet great people like all of you in the chat, Sarah, and so many other amazing HR professionals who have actually said, we do need help. We want you to work with us. And as a result of that happening, business has grown. And so I no longer have the capacity to do a live session every single week. The other thing too is that like I said, when I first created my podcast show, I really wanted to have live go in tandem with it, but that didn't happen. I didn't get LinkedIn Live until like a year and some after my podcast show. And so I'm going to once a month from January, every third Wednesday in January, you will get a LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and it will be called HR Sound Off Live, which ties in with my podcast. And I will be magnifying HR voices just as I do on my podcast show. Yes, Lynette. Yes, it's time to make some money. It's time.
You got it.
Yes,
we need you at your best.
It's time. Like I've been doing a lot, all this stuff that I do, all this content that I give to you, I do it for free. Like I take this time and I do it for free. But it does come at a cost. I do have to pay for StreamYard. I do have to pay for Podbean so that I can create my podcast. So I need to get paid some way so that I can continue to do these things. So I'm going to be dialing it back a bit from January. But what can you expect? So much great stuff. I already have guests lined up for the first 7 months of the year. I'm not going to tell you who they are. I'll be rolling it out bit by bit, but you'll be really happy to see some of the guests that we're going to get to have conversations with, because this is not my show, this is our show. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to get to see all of these amazing people in the HR space or HR adjacent who are supporting us and helping us to grow this community. I believe this is a community. I don't sit on LinkedIn just to take in information. I share and I give a lot. And I think that it's important that we recognize this is a community and it's a safe space. I've worked really hard to create a safe space for every single HR professional who is here right now interacting with me. And I don't want this to ever change. So you can look out for LinkedIn Live, HR Sound Off Live from January 23rd. That is coming your way. What else is happening? Oh gosh, guys, I just signed a partnership with the Academy to Innovate HR. So if you've never heard of the Academy to Innovate HR, you need to go check them out, AIHR. As a matter of fact, go to my website, which is hr@heart.co, and on there you'll see a link for AIHR, which is my affiliate link. Now, why have I decided to collaborate with the Academy to Innovate HR? I've been collaborating with the Academy to Innovate HR for about almost a year now. I sit in their community as a subject matter expert. I support their students as they go through their educational journeys to upskill and reskill themselves as HR professionals. So we cover courses like how to be an HR business partner, how to understand HR analytics. There are so many things. Such a great catalog of courses in there that you can use to upskill and reskill yourself outside of SHRM, outside of CIPD. And they are such a great organization, and I felt nothing but love from them from day one. And so finally signed a partnership agreement with them on Friday last week. So I'm now an official partner. And I want you guys to benefit from the discounts that they are offering through me. So go check out my website, hr@heart.co, and click on that link, AIHR, and you'll learn more about them there. So that's one. Two, I am also now an official partner of Culture Amp. Culture Amp is an amazing company. Again, they focus on employee engagement and they also focus on performance management. But they really drill down and help you get all that data that you need to support your organization. I do not have my affiliate link for Culture Amp, but I do. If you are interested in Culture Amp, just send me a message and I will get the information to them through their referral link that I have. And they will send someone your way to help you learn more about it. But I feel like one of the things that we talked about, Sarah, is performance management. And I know this is a constant conversation, and I feel it's one we'll have to have in 2022. I think a lot of people think performance management is dead. Now, I don't think it's dead. I just think the way that we do it is dead.
Yeah, no, and it just needs to be done differently because people need development.
Exactly. And I feel like what Culture Amp has created is that sweet spot. And the great thing about Culture Amp is that they do integrate with other software. So if you're using Bamboo HR, Workday, whatever you're using, it can integrate with that software. So I want you to also take a look at that, and let's work together on dealing with that as well. So those are my announcements for now. I do have one other really big announcement. I'm scared to announce it.
Should I drum roll it? I'm not a drum roller.
My first TED Talk. I am excited and I'm nervous all at the same time. I will be giving my first TED Talk at the University of Graz in Austria in March 2022. There will be more information surrounding that. But again, I couldn't be doing these things if it wasn't for you, my community, and the support and the love that you show. So thank you so much for all of the love and the support that you show. I will be sharing more information about my TED Talk as time progresses. But yeah, I'm super excited for that. So thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for showing love, for being a part of this community. I love you. I appreciate you. I will see you again January 23rd. I'll be somewhere in the background, but I am taking a social media detox towards Christmas, and I will be back then January 23rd. So if it looks like I've gone radio silent, I have not. But I also recognize the importance of taking a social media detox, and I will be doing that from Christmas into the new year, up to my first live on the 23rd of January 2022. We will be back. So I will see you then. Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys so much. Take care. Be safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Brush your teeth. I will see you soon. Bye.